As an addendum to the main video I did, the video on my main channel, I want to talk about Trump allies raising money to target reporters. See, the actual story is that there are some people who are conservative, and they had been digging up old embarrassing tweets. The New York Times was shocked and outraged that anyone would dare try and expose them for their bad behavior, and then claimed it was a loose-knit group of Trump allies trying to discredit their reporters. In response, it would seem that there's now going to be, I guess, an official fundraising effort using the press from the New York Times. Congratulations, New York Times, you've played yourself. So let's take a look at this story. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address, but of course, just share this video if you like it. Sharing helps overcome the deranking that YouTube does to my channels and other independent political commentators. Well, let's read this because I want to talk more. I want to talk about more than just what the Trump allies are doing. I want to point out first and foremost, the left has been doing this forever. Media Matters, for instance, exists. And there's also this study, which is actually a couple months old, which shows that the left absolutely holds a double standard in how they want to apply censorship, which makes sense when you realize how they target these Trump supporters for doing exactly what Media Matters does. Let's read. Axios, which I'm not a big fan of, reports, President Trump's political allies are trying to raise at least $2 million to investigate reporters and editors of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and other outlets, according to a 3-page fundraising pitch reviewed by Axios. Why it matters? Trump's war on the media is expanding. Oh, Trump's war. This group will target reporters and editors, while other GOP 2020 entities go after the social media platforms alleging bias, officials tell us. The group claims it will slip damaging information about reporters and editors to friendly media outlets such as Breitbart and traditional media if possible. People involved in raising the funds include GOP consultant Arthur Schwartz and the, quote, loose network the New York Times reported last week is targeting journalists. The operations are to be run by undisclosed others. They say the prospectus for the new project says it's targeting the people producing the news. The irony, if it's actually really irony, the New York Times exposed an extremely improvisational effort that had outed a Times editor for past anti-Semitic tweets. This new group is now using the exposure to try to formalize and fund the operation. There you go, New York Times, you done backfired and played yourself. Organizers joke that their slogan should be brought to you by the New York Times. Under, quote, primary targets, the pitch lists CNN, MSNBC, all broadcast networks, New York Times, Washington Post, BuzzFeed, Huffington Post, and all others that routinely incorporate bias and misinformation into their coverage. We will also track the reporters and editors of these organizations. They go on to say this isn't an entirely new concept. The liberal group Media Matters monitors journalists and publications and goes public with complaints of bias. But being this blatant and specific about trying to discredit individual reporters is new. I actually don't really think so. I think this is what Media Matters overtly does. I mean, do they really hide it? I gotta say, I feel really sorry for people who read this website thinking it's real. Seriously. Wait, hold on. They got a green check mark? Okay, no, they don't. Okay, so NewsGuard says Media Matters doesn't post fake news, but they don't correct errors. I wonder if there's an about section we can dig into. Probably not. Oh, here we go. Let's read the about section for Media Matters. They say Media Matters for America is a web-based, not-for-profit, progressive research and information center dedicated to comprehensively monitoring, analyzing, and correcting conservative misinformation in the U.S. media. Is that a way of saying lie or mislead? Because I can tell you right away, they've lied and misled people about me, so I can certainly assume they would do it about others. Launched in May 2004, Media Matters for America put in place for the first time the means to systematically monitor a cross-section of print, broadcast, yada, yada. Look, we get the point. Media Matters is literally what they're claiming the Trump supporters now want to do. So maybe they should name it something similar. But whenever we talk about the media and the bias, there are literally nonprofits where they employ people to do nothing but watch conservative content and then smear them. And then when Trump supporters say, hey, we'll do that, they go, oh, ye gad, oh, harumph, I say, how dare conservatives call them out? Look at the New York Times actually coming out with a story saying Trump supporters are trying to come after us because they don't like our reporting. Well, what have you guys been doing? Okay, welcome to the party you started. You're lucky conservatives held back as long as they did. Now, here's the thing. People on the left think they're the benevolent dictators. They tend, as of today, it didn't used to be this way. They're not fact-checking. They're just believing whatever it is they hear on the internet. Now, of course, there are conservatives who fall into this trap too, but it's overwhelmingly the left. And this is why moderates and conservatives tend to agree on a worldview and liberals don't. But there's this study here called The Ideology of Censorship. And they have the abstract essentially proving the left wants to censor ideas that they don't like, and they don't want to censor ideas they do like, because they don't have a consistent principle backing what they're actually doing. They just say, rules for thee, but not for me. I get power and you don't. So why would we ever want to empower a group of people that want power for no reason other than to have it? That's the last person who should be in charge, right? The person who should be in charge is the person who doesn't want to be, which is one of the biggest problems we have, is that, everybody who wants to be a politician probably shouldn't be. Let's read this. So I'm not going to read the entire, PDF publication, but this is from a few months ago. This is from, it's the Ideology of Censorship ResearchGate by Bo Weingard, Corey J. Clark, and Ethan Bunnell. So let me say this. Maybe I have been wrong in my assessment. Let's read this so we can get their actual assessment of what's happening. The study says, recent work has suggested that liberals have sacred values about protecting low status groups and thus are particularly prone to bias against any information that portrays those groups unfavorably. In a pre-registered study, N equals 559, we tested whether liberals would support more censorship of information that portrays low status groups unfavorably. So they say that men evolve to be better leaders than women, and they go on to talk about Islam and terror and white people, intelligence, etc. Then similar information that portrays high status groups unfavorably. So, what do they say? That women evolve to be better leaders than men, Christianity is violent, etc. So you can see how they inverted it. The results very clearly supported predictions. Liberals consistently displayed double standards in their censorship preferences, such that they desired to censor information that portrays low status groups unfavorably more than information that portrays high status groups unfavorably. Moderates and conservatives supported more similar levels of censorship regardless of whether the information was favorable toward relatively high or low status groups. But conservatives did display a small preference for censoring Christian violence over Islamic violence. Exploratory analysis also revealed that millennials might be slightly more in support of censorship than Generation X in general. But baby boomers' censorship support generally fell between that of Generation X and millennials. Perhaps that has to do with millennials being the children of boomers for the most part. But we can see something, there's a couple things interesting here. First, what are they using to determine what a low status group is? Now, I'm sure it's probably in the research, and I'm not going to pull up the full text of the PDF. You got to sign up and do a bunch of stuff like that. But they do, I'm not going to read through everything, but I guess it's all here, right? Well, anyway, here's what I want to point out. What makes someone a low status group, and why I find this study worrisome? A low status group in the eyes of the left isn't necessarily those without power. They believe multimillionaires are low status people who are, you can't criticize or you can't try and, challenge their power. They're individuals who are extremely powerful in politics. Ocasio-Cortez is one of them. Sure, maybe a year ago she was a nobody, but now she's a congresswoman and she has tremendous power. When people criticize her, she says, "Oh, harumph, I say, how dare you challenge a woman of color?" This is the problem with, in my opinion, the liberal censorship. Media Matters is trying to get people taken down using this bias. And that's pretty worrisome if you ask me, when you realize there's no principle behind what they're actually advocating. And we can see that moderates and conservatives support similar levels of censorship regardless. I think censorship is bad, but the fact that moderates and conservatives are acting on principle makes sense and the left isn't. The left just wants power. If you're someone like Dave Chappelle, a black man, and you challenge them, they will slam you. If you're Serena Williams, they will claim you're a poor, innocent victim. In the end, what they end up doing is propping up the oligopoly, the wealthy. Look, right now the military-industrial complex, the big weapons manufacturers in the US are all headed by women. Congratulations, feminism, you've won. And now you can't challenge them because, well, that would be biased against a low-status group. You see the problem. We need to challenge people based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin, not their religion. And let's make this point. Is Islam, they mention in the study it's a low status group. In the US, maybe, but in the world, not really. And that's another issue. By all means, let's call out the bigotry against religious groups. But are you going to empower a global power, and allow these people to gain a foothold in countries where they don't have a large enough majority up until they get a majority? It doesn't make sense. If you've got a bad idea, we'll call it out, regardless of who you are, regardless of the color of your skin, your gender, or where you've come from, or what God you believe in. Bad ideas are bad ideas, period. So here's the big point, and I'll wrap this up. They're shocked now that Trump supporters are playing the same game as Media Matters, right? It's not just Media Matters. Tons of left-wing media companies do the same thing. They act like the moral arbiters and the police. And we can see based on the study that when it comes to the intersectional ideology, there's no principles behind this. These are people who want power for the sake of having power. Those are the last people who should get it. So stick around. I got a couple more segments coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.